Hello, everyone. Welcome to our DMs. Thank you for sliding in. My name is Dan,
My name is Montana.
and welcome to Slide into the Disabilities, the DM with Dan and Montana. We're going to continue our conversation from the previous part about self-care and spoons. And I think the best way to start this part two goes into this idea of sometimes people within our support system or some things that we have within our coping or the way that we balance or manage our spoons are taken away from us or they don't agree with certain situations. And it can be really difficult. And I think the best question is like if you've had a situation where someone is either not supporting you in the way that you feel like you need, or there's a situation that your accessibility or your self-care routine are out of the discussion or out of the realm of possibility, how you've been able to really balance and cope with it.
Yeah, well, that hit very close to home. Um, and yeah, I think it's very different for everyone in their walks of life. One thing that I've been realizing a lot, I've had some really amazing people in my support system. I love them dearly. They've completely helped a lot, like my family, my partner, and a few of my really, really close friends. But I had this experience the past few months with this one person in particular that we are just not on the same page. I think we are growing apart per se, and we have very different ideas, and our values, I would say, are a little bit more different. I've never had conversation with them regarding like what their personal values are, but from their actions and the words that they speak, I'm realizing their values are not in line with the values that I have set place on in my life. And that's no one's fault at all. I just think it's gotten to the point where we are at crossroads, and I've had a lot of conversations, a lot of reflecting, journaling, and trying to figure out overall like what's best for me, but also what's best for them, like moving forward as well. Like, is this a good friendship, relationship, whatever it is, moving forward? And I've gotten to a point where I had to say to myself, like, enough is enough. I've given this much time, grace, rope per se, and not a lot of things are changing. And I feel like my voice is not being heard. I feel like I'm not being very seen for who I am, not only as Montana, but Montana who has a chronic illness, and her health is a huge priority in her life. And if you can't back that my health is important, and you say it is, but then go completely different, it's starting to show me like your true colors, and realizing that we're on very different pages. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's just making me realize that it's okay to be selfish. And that's taken a very long time for me to be like, Montana, it's okay to put yourself first in the situation. Like, if someone is not helping your energy, your mentality, your space, your peace, if they're not providing that for you or helping you, per se, those spoons, right? If they're taking spoons away from you and not adding spoons to you whenever you talk or hang out, then maybe it's time to reevaluate on where you are in life, where they're at in life, and what makes sense moving forward. If that is more of a distance friendship, or if that's reconnecting in a few months. But I would say, answer your question is just being a little bit more selfish and being okay with putting yourself and your health first if needed.
Yeah. And I think that is a really big part of self-care that we can really neglect or forget. And it's that idea of if something isn't serving us anymore and helping us, whether it's a materialistic item or a real person, that it is
Mm-hmm.
okay to cut that out of our lives and that we can move on, that it's actually better for us and caring for ourselves and caring for that other person or that other thing that we move forward in our lives and move on. Because being
Hmm.
holding on to something that isn't productive, it can drain us so much. Like I know so many times of so many people are just like, oh, I don't want to text this person, or oh, I don't want to, this person isn't supporting me anymore. And it's just like, it's just draining, like continuing these
Hmm.
conversations and pretending that everything is still normal or still doing the things that we used to love. Um, or trying to do something that we cared about, but it's just not helping us anymore. I think
Yeah.
one really good example, and this kind of goes back to the previous part. I used to really love doing gymnastics, and it got to the point where it was a materialistic thing that it used to help me. It was a very big supportive thing. It was a good coping mechanism, but it got to the point where it just wasn't doing that for me anymore, and I was getting stressed and I was getting angry and I was getting sad that I wasn't like being able to perform at the level I wanted to. And I was like, you know what, it's I want to leave this on a happy note. I want to be okay with this. I'm
Hmm.
spending way too many of my spoons on it and that I'm not getting the return or the happiness that I'm getting. And I walked away from it, and I still look back on all the memories very fondly. And that's
Wow.
something that's important to acknowledge.
Yeah, that's very big of you, like walking away and knowing yourself to do that. I feel like when I was a teenager per se, it would have taken a lot for me to do that. And that's one thing that I've realized of how much I've grown throughout the last 4 or 5 years from me being first diagnosed to now, is I tried very hard to keep that life I had previously, keep holding on to like the friends I had in like elementary, middle, high school. And the more and more I realized, I still have a few friends that I went to school with, and they're really great and I love them. But there's been a few that we've fallen out of contact or we're no longer as close as we were before. But it's because our priorities changed, and they went to college, and it was a 4 year experience for them to party, while my college experience, I got diagnosed with a rare eye disease as a freshman. I was going to doctors in between midterms and final exams. We were trying to figure out what's going on. Then once we did figure out what's going on, it's like, what medication can you be on? I was doing work and school, going to doctors, and just trying to cope with life, and then trying to pretend that when I do go to these college parties and hanging out with like my friends, that everything's normal. And I took a step back and realized I'm not really much of a party person per se. Like I love spending quality time with people. Like I love cooking with people, watching movies together, going on new experiences. I love that. I get so many spoons from it. But going to bars, hopping, all these things that you would do in college just so you have that typical college experience, I was not getting spoons from it. And I kept trying. Like it's like the pigeonhole and you just keep putting it in and it's just not working. I kept trying to be, I think, someone that I was not, to cope
Yeah.
with me
And
having that diagnosis and realizing I am a little bit different than my friends. And I thought they understood where I was coming from with my health. But then sometimes I saw their faces, they had no clue. And that's completely okay. They had no clue. But one thing I started noticing a lot with the friends I'm no longer that close with is they weren't asking me how I was doing, how I was coping. They were asking me for rides to parties. They were asking me to be the designated driver because I can't drink with the medications I'm on for my chronic illnesses. And over time and time again, I felt, I don't want to say used because I feel like that's such a bad term.
I would say to a degree that you were. I think that is a
Yeah,
fair
yeah,
word.
yeah. I always try to like look at something from like the positive light. But looking back at these like past friendships, I felt I was a little bit used per se. Um, and then now moving forward with where I'm at in my life, I have a really wonderful partner. He's really great and I can talk to him about anything. And there's been like a few times where I know we're going out with my friends, we're going out with his friends. And I looked at him, I'm like, I don't want to be the DD. And he's like, I know. And he's like, I'm not drinking either. I'm gonna be with you. And I'm like, okay, great. Because I'm not a big fan of driving. A lot of people know this about me. I don't really prefer driving. I do it when necessary, but I don't like it. I've never been a person who's loved it for some reason. I don't know why. So I've said yes a lot of times to make other people's lives comfortable in the past. And I'm now realizing later on that why am I saying yes to be a designated driver if it makes me so uncomfortable? Why I'm saying yes to going out to parties and drinking when I can't drink alcohol with the medicines I'm on. And so it makes me reevaluate where I'm at in my life a lot more and figuring out who's going to stay in my life, that they're okay with me not partying, drinking, doing this, you know? And I have some really amazing people in my life that stayed, which I'm so appreciative of. But I do have a few friends that we speak on occasion, but not at the depth that we used to, because I've realized we were very different.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. Like it really resonated with me because it is really an important theme of self-care and the spoons, that idea of like for a lot of not only just disabled people but just people in general feel that sense of they need to fit in with the crowd to belong. They need to be doing what everyone else is doing. And that can be very counterintuitive to our health or our
Mm-hmm.
self-care, whatever we're trying to do. And it could get to the point where the sense of what we're trying to do to fit in is just us being used or us just going through the motions of it. And that's no way to exist. That's no way to care for our bodies or our minds. That's no way that we should be spending our spoons. We should be doing things that are more beneficial to us, being more personal to us, that we can invite people in. And I think that goes into the other part that's really hard, is that communication of when things aren't working uh
Yeah.
in terms of self-care, and or in terms of a support person who did our support system. I used to be really bad with communicating that to friends, but I always remember one time, I think I was like 16, at a cardiologist appointment, and the cardiologist just wasn't listening to me. I was getting really snippy about it, and kind of being like a little angsty 16-year-old trying to defend myself, but in like how an angsty 16-year-old would. And like my mom was like siding with my cardiologist, so I walked out. I was like, I'm done. I don't care. I'm done with this appointment. I just went back to the car. And I remember my mom got like really pissed at me, and we had like an argument. But it was this idea of like, I wanted you to have my back. I wanted you to listen to what I was saying. And then it also like I talked to my cardiologist afterward, because I had been with the same cardiologist now for 24 years. But just talking to her and having her realize like I'm not 6, 7 years old anymore. I'm someone that knows my body. I am telling you these things that are hurting and you're not listening to me. I need you to please listen to me if we're going to continue working together.
Wow. That's amazing that you did that like at 16 years old. I'm sorry that you had to go through that and be like, hey, I need you to respect me and like listen to me. Like I am the patient. I understand like where you're coming from, but also like, see me and hear me. And that's so amazing that you were able to communicate that to your mom as well as your doctor. Because I feel, and I can only speak personally for me, but sometimes I kind of forget that doctors, they put their pants on the same way that we do. Um, and it's okay to have that talk with them and be like, hey, like I'm not okay with like how these appointments have been going. Where can we go like moving forward? I know you and I have had this conversation like privately before regarding like what I've dealt with like the specialist and where I've gone like moving forward. And I'm always the person that I always believe in research and trying new things and looking at different options. Like I started acupuncture, it will be a year, I think in March, and no one really recommended it. I was just doing research for it, and then I asked like my doctor, I'm like, should I try that? They're like, yeah, and like may help. And I love it. I think this is the best thing for me since being diagnosed. I know everyone's completely different, but that has been really a self-care tool for me, that I know when I'm getting in a pre-flare or a flare, like I text my acupuncturist, I'm like, hey, these are like what I'm experiencing, go to her, being like, hey, this is what's happening. And we try different like pressure points and seeing what will work, and be like, okay, we're going to try this. Okay, how about we do this? And it just helps my quality of life so much better. And I've realized the relationship that I've had with my acupuncture, I want to continue that relationship with all my other medical practitioners, because I feel like, especially where I live in the Triangle area in North Carolina, it's a lot of research based, which is great, but it takes a while to get into appointments. And once you're in the appointments, you have multiple fellows in there with you. And so it can be very overwhelming, and you don't get through all the points that you want to, even though like you wrote them down. It's just, there's a lot happening. Um, so it's really great to hear that at 16, you were advocating for yourself, being like, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. Please listen to me. Because I feel like a lot of the times, our society, or even like myself, we sometimes try to side with the doctor, but overall we know our body more than anyone. Had a few times where I knew something was off, and my doctor was like, well, your blood work came back fine. I'm like, something's off, like I don't know what it is, but there's just something. And a few weeks later, I got sick, big flare, something was changing in like my system. So good for you.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's like, I did not intend to be like standing up for myself. It was honestly just like really out of spite and anger during the initial part. And then like post talking with my mom and like having that argument, I was like, okay, I need to talk to my doctor. And I was really grateful in that sense of like I had like worked with her my whole life, so we were able to really communicate in a way that isn't the most usual for doctor patient relationships.
Yeah.
And but it was also like for me like some of the best self-care that I've done, because if I had let that type of thing slide, then it gets to the point where I'm just agreeing with the doctor and whatever they say and taking everything at face value rather than prodding further, trying to get more information that I need, trying to
Hmm.
challenge or express some of the things that I've been feeling, because I live in my body 24/7. You see me once every 6 months. Um, so I
Hmm.
think self-care also just goes beyond like sitting in a bathtub or watching a movie or anything. Like self-care extends to, that advocacy side of being to either friends that aren't supportive of you anymore and walking away, or standing up for yourself in a medical setting. Like that's you're
Yeah.
caring for yourself in that way.
Yeah, 100%. And just knowing when enough is enough. I had not like a similar situation, but I had one of my first specialists I ever had for my eye disease. He and I just had very different personalities, and we were just not like a very good mix, per se. And we would have conversations regarding like what's going on with my eyes. And I felt like he did not understand, or like the doctors who had like bedside manner. I feel like there was not much there. It was just like, okay, you're the patient, this is what's happening. There's no empathy or support moving forward. And I realized I really need that as a patient. Like I don't want to be a, like, I was gonna say test subject, but there's probably a better term. But I want to be seen and heard for who I am as an individual, not who I am for just that specific disease that I have or that chronic illness. So I did a lot of research, and I went to multiple specialists to find like which one works best for me. And that's how I have my amazing eye specialist now. He actually just moved, sadly, but I have his amazing um, person that was like under him. He's really great. He is very holistic as well as Western medicine lies, and he listens to all my thoughts and ideas about reducing stress, doing all the self-care supplements, taking vitamins, and just really being able to advocate for yourself. Because I know with a lot of doctors I also talked to previously, it's always been medicine, medicine, medicine. And I know medicine works and it's great. It's kept me stable. I'm grateful for that. However, I hopefully will get to the point that I'm not going to be on multiple medications. I'm only going to be like on one, is what I'm hoping for one day, maybe, if all goes well, manifesting it. But I think it's important to know that you're able to like do that. Like you're allowed to find what's best for you. Like you
Yeah.
can advocate for yourself and find a person that fits well for you. And if someone doesn't fit well anymore, have that conversation like you had with yours at 16 and just be like, okay, this is what I'm experiencing. What can we do moving forward? And then if those things are not getting improved and the boundaries are not like where they need to be, then it's okay to walk away and look for others. Some people say it's not good to doctor shop, but I have a different opinion because I feel like we're all very different and unique, and we should be allowed to feel very confident in our medical professionals.
I agree. I think I'm a big advocate of doctor shopping. I am a big advocate of knowing when to walk
Yes.
away from a situation like that, whether it's with a doctor or if it was with a friend that things are starting to drift apart. Uh, sometimes, sometimes as well, like I've had extended family that I've had to cut out of my life. Like there are things that like
Mhm.
if it's not helping your self-care and it's draining you to like taking so many spoons away. I remember so I have this cousin that dabbles a lot into certain conspiracy theories. Uh, and I used to be very close with this cousin prior to a lot of events that have happened over the last 5, 6 years. And then it just soon turned into like just talking from like sports and stuff to him wanting to talk about all these different conspiracy theories. And it was so draining because like at first like I was like, okay, I'll listen to it and be like, no, this is a little ridiculous, and like, here's why. But then it started like getting like really hostile. And I was like, okay, this is like, and I still had that like I could fix some energy, which like in any relationship never gets to the point where you have that. It's already done. Especially yeah.
Yeah, solid
Um,
advice. Yes.
but yeah, like I just like got to the point where it's like it was dreading like having these calls, and whenever like it did, it was just like afterward, like I was physically just like exhausted, physically exhausted. Like I
Mhm.
felt like I went on like a marathon, like a run. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. I just had to block all like text message, Facebook, like no. And
Mhm.
it's been so beneficial to me.
Yeah. Wow. I'm sorry that you had that happen and the person was taking away your spoons, but I'm glad that you had the self-awareness to be like, okay, enough is enough. Like I'm physically exhausted, like you were saying, like you were
I wish
noticing
I
your
found it
body.
sooner.
Yeah, that's that's the trick of like knowing when to like cut it off or space yourself. I feel like one of my bad character traits, well, I guess it's not bad, but I see the good in everyone. And I'm also very empathetic towards everyone's situation, that I'm always thinking about their perspective of like, oh, like they're going through this. This is what's happening. So it's basically me based making excuses. And then I realized later on, after the things have happened on the flip side, that were they making any like excuses for me or were they putting themselves in like my shoes? Usually the answer is no. Like 80% of the time the answer is no. Um, but I wish, like you were saying, like figured out ways how to cut it off sooner. I feel like it can be difficult to cut it off even though you know it's good for you or it will likely be good for you, but it's that grief of not knowing what will happen like later.
And that's the thing too, where it's always that very hard at the moment to move
Mhm.
forward with something because like you said there's so much uncertainty and you never know, but that's kind of whether or not you do it, there's uncertainty. Like walk out tomorrow, get hit by a car, and it doesn't matter if you're disabled or not, you game over, um
Yeah.
so it's kind of just embracing that uncertainty and experiencing it because that's part of going back to the first part, the roller coaster that we're on. And
Mhm.
we have to just kind of enjoy the ride, even the ones where it's like a loop de loop and we want to vomit.
Yeah. Yeah, I also think it's important to know when you are at that process of needing to cut someone out or just need something different in your life and have like more space and grace in that person who was your support system or a friend or whatever, they're no longer like there for you like they used to be, that it's good to look back at what relationships have ended like this per se, and kind of pat yourself on the back a little bit, being like, oh, remember this time I had this person that I was really close friends with in middle school. We did everything together. I thought I could not live without this person. And then here I am multiple years later. I still wish them the best. However, it was a good decision that like we moved on. So I think possibly going back to your past self a little bit and reliving those experiences that you thought was going to be the worst experience ever, and just saying, am I going to, like, is this going to affect me 5 years from now? Is it going to be a little blip in my roller coaster and story, a little like hill, or is it not even going to be there due to how positive an impact it's going to have due to my own self-care and my own journey?
Yeah. And that's something that's so interesting is like, yeah, everyone has their own little story, their own journey, and we want us to be everyone to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it is that idea of some people are just on the ride for a little part, but they could have that big ripple, or people are in it for a long time and are
Yeah.
draining and they're slowing it down and they're not allowing you to have the joy or the love or the energy that you have. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really important to find those types of people in your lives. And also just thinking about that idea of just how one little interaction or one little thing can make such a big difference in your self-care or your life. One beautiful story that I've had recently, about a year ago, I reconnected with a friend, or not really a friend, someone I knew in high school. We were never like friends during that time. We never really talked too much. But our senior year, we talked a little bit, and I was in a really dark spot in my life, but it was more apparent for me, and this person was having a time in their life that was harder, and they didn't really feel like they could express it or feel better about their situation or feel like they knew someone going through something. And it was me and a third friend that we started like just sparking a conversation with this person, and we had like a wonderful interaction, and it stuck with this person for years, and it was something that I was completely unaware of, but it was
Wow.
just really meaningful. And especially now that like we talk consistently and we're good friends, now it's really special.
Yeah, that's so amazing that you were there and that that was the experience. I'm sorry that they were going through such a difficult time, but I'm glad that you were able to shed some kind of kindness and light in their life. I think it's so important for us to like take away that no matter what's happening in your life, you may be on the downest roller coaster you are. Like it happens, life happens. Life is lifing. Like I'm telling a lot of people this week for some reason. That's like my catchphrase of the week. Um, that if you can try your best to be kind not only to yourself but someone else, it does pave it forward. I've had a similar story with that, but I feel like on the opposite side, it was a good friend of mine that was an old coworker, and it was like the rare disease day, and she posted something, and I was like, "Oh my God, rare disease day!" And she's like, "Yeah, you should get connected with like blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Okay, great." And then through that whole encounter of her just doing one little post on our channel and the company that we used to work for, it just spiraled like 2, 3 years later, we're still friends and we talk oh, not as regularly as I want to, but probably like once or twice, like maybe a month, and we connect every like few months, like in person, which is great. I love like seeing them. But I told her like that story of like you literally made my day that day posting that like zebra day and just having awareness, and it made me feel like I was not alone in that company that we worked for, because she knew someone who had like a rare disease, so she posted it. But then that's how my advocacy started, and how I started meeting people who were similar and had similar chronic illnesses, had eye diseases, and I started feeling not alone. It's great to have your support system of your family, friends, but most of my support system, they're able-bodied. They don't have anything wrong with them, per se, which I'm super thankful that everyone's healthy, but it can be hard to talk to them about some things that we encounter in a everyday life having this, and them saying, "Oh, don't stress," when you're in a flare, by the way, does not help. Um, so you have to have those conversations with them and be like, "Hey, this is not helpful. Like, I need you to respect like where I'm at this time. I know you're trying to help, but with you doing this, it's not very considerate," and stuff like that. Um, but I know they mean well. It's just having, yeah, you can make someone's day, basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, you never know the impact that you can make, and I'm so grateful that you had that coworker and
Same.
that you found this community. And I'm glad that you found this community because I wouldn't have met you otherwise, and we wouldn't be here filming an amazing podcast. And
Yes.
I think that that story was a perfect way to end our self-care. I just did some self-care by taking my meds while you were sharing that wonderful story.
Yeah.
Um, Funnily enough, my meds, I have never learned to swallow medication. I've always chewed mine. I did that at Rare Disease Week last year, and it was
Okay.
not self-care in their reaction because they thought I like murdered someone.
Oh my
So I'm excited to do that again, during
god.
to show the maybe disturb some people. Might not be self-care for them, but it's self-care for me, and that's
Yeah.
that's what matters.
Yeah, I completely understand with the pill swallowing. I could not do it for like 18, 19 years of my life. And then I got a chronic illness. And then they started giving me like pills. I'm like, there's no way. So I was hiding it in smoothies, like applesauce, chewing,
That that's amazing.
swallowing the pills. I'm not like my like 6 or 8 pills at a time and no issues. I wish I can do that. I have to do it one by one. Oh no. I understand where you're coming from. Pills are hard. No.
Yeah. Yeah. So on that wonderful note, we have reached the end of our second podcast. Please be sure to join us for our third one, where we're going to be talking about grief and coming to terms with our disability. Uh, that will be in 2 weeks. But until then, please feel free to leave some feedback. Please like, subscribe, any and all reception. We are so excited to hear. We want to continue making this project better because we make this all for you. And then don't forget to use the links to go to Disability Rewritten's Instagram page as well as our Patreon. And until then, I hope you all have a wonderful night. Bye.
Bye.